Recording locked. Send. Button.
Hello, listeners. I'm back again with this audio clip, and our topic for this clip is perspective on blindness. You will recall that very recently I had posted a video on perspective on disability, and there, while talking about disability in general, I also made a passing mention about blindness, and in that context, I stated that blindness is a minor physical nuisance, but I didn't elaborate on it. So this may create, uh, some kind of uh, misunderstanding in the sense that my what I am actually trying to say may not be properly understood, and therefore I felt that I should make a separate audio clip on this topic, perspective on blindness. Um, Before I get into the substantive part of my of this discussion, let me reveal at the outset that my perspective or my philosophy of blindness has been profoundly shaped and influenced and informed by the philosophy um, espoused by two American gentlemen. Both of them happened to be blind, and both of them were lawyers by profession, namely late Dr. Jacobus Tenbrook and late Dr. Kenneth Jernigan. Both of them are the past presidents of the National Federation of the Blind of America. Jacobus Tenbrook was the founder president of Dr. Jacobus Tenbrook was the founder president of the National Federation of the Blind of America. He founded that organization, that self-help and self-advocacy movement way back in the year 1940. And Dr. Kenneth Jernigan, another genius, uh, succeeded. He succeeded Dr. Tenbrook. He was Dr. Tenbrook's immediate successor. Now, coming to what I had said, and I think it's very important to clarify. Um, well, I said that blindness is a minor physical nuisance, a view which is actually expounded by the National Federation of the Blind of America. But one may argue that American context is pretty different compared to the Indian context, yes. But I think the interesting insight on blindness is worth noting, and I believe that the insight espoused by these two gentlemen on blindness is pretty profound and has a lot of value, even lot of universal value. Uh, Now, when I say that it is a minor physical nuisance, I said this in relative terms. If you compare the limitations imposed on a person uh, who has profound intellectual or psychosocial disability, or who has profound multiple disabilities, I think the limitations that are encountered by us as blind persons are relatively less formidable. Secondly, I feel that blindness per se is not is not a thing that actually deters one from performing efficiently. Yes, it is the barriers that blind people routinely encounter in society which actually compound the limitations faced by the blind, and that's what that makes this challenge for the blind very serious. Otherwise, blindness per se or blindness in itself or by itself is not such a big thing. Yes, you are deprived of a very important sense, but that apart, it doesn't deter you from performing. And These are the two reasons why I said what I said, and now I would like to elaborate upon a little upon what that philosophy of blindness is. Now you may say that philosophy bakes no bread, but friends, it has also been observed with equal wisdom that no bread is baked without a philosophy. And I'm talking about all these philosophies and principles in an attempt to set the tone for the ensuing discussions that we are going to have on this channel. Um, blindness actually is not what it is very often thought to be. It is not equal to dying. Loss of sight is not the loss of the world, as many people say. I remember when I was a child, and when people used to look at me, and then they used to tell my parents, "Oh my God, such a cute kid, लेकिन क्या करे, आंख गई, संसार गया, अब कुछ नहीं है इसके लिए." तो so that it this philosophy is actually this philosophy belies that kind of an attitude, and rightly so. Now, according to this philosophy of blindness, blindness is a limitation like any other limitation. Now, that limitation may be serious, less serious, more serious. That's a different matter, but it is a limitation. And there they cite certain examples. They say, for example, there is a house and the color of the house is white, so it is limited to being white. It is not green, it is not blue, it is not red. Likewise, they say that sometimes overqualification becomes a limitation, and on other occasions, underqualification may become a limitation. For example, uh, a, a post or a position or a job has been advertised where minimum qualification required or where qualification required is graduation. Now, if a PhD holder, degree holder applies for this, he may be rejected because he is overqualified for the job. Overqualification being the limitation of that person in this case. Likewise, if a person who is barely high school pass out applies, he too would be rejected because he is underqualified for the job. Underqualification uh, being a limitation here. Likewise, uh, sometimes youth becomes a limitation, and sometimes old age becomes a limitation. For example, there are two people, let us say, two individuals. One is 20 and the other is 50 or 60. If you are to make a choice out of those two people for a leadership job or leadership position, normally, ordinarily, you would select the elderly man to the exclusion of the youth. Uh, Experience being the advantage of the elderly person, youth being the limitation here of the younger person. But in a different scenario, if you are to choose one of these two people for playing in a cricket match, probably you will be selecting the younger person because he has more energy, more stamina, to the exclusion of the older person, old age being the limitation here of the older person. Likewise, they cite an example. There is one blind person and one person who is of average qualification, and the blind person, let us say, is a lawyer. And if you are to select out of those two persons for working out your income tax or for your some legal counseling, you will certainly select the lawyer. uh, uh, Ignorance of law or not being qualified in law, not being trained in law, is being the limitation of the sighted person. But if you are to select out of those two persons for playing in a cricket match, blindness here becomes a limitation of the blind person, and eyesight becomes an advantage. I'm not talking about the cricket of the blind here. So these are some of the examples. So, what this philosophy says, and it has really stayed with me since then, that we, the blind, are neither subhuman nor superhuman. We are as human as anyone else. It says that, sometimes people uh, expound all kinds of theories. They will say, "Oh, there is one theory which continues to do the rounds, and that is called compensatory theory. That when you are deprived of one sense, it is compensated through some other means." So that philosophy actually rejects that idea. Now, yes, my sense of touch may be greater than the sense of touch of a sighted person, not necessarily because I am blind, but because I use my tactile faculty more than a sighted person normally uses. So, the more you use a certain faculty, the sharper it becomes, right? Some person would actually attribute certain things to what they would call your supernatural or super normal qualities. This is not actually a compliment, because in effect, what does it say? It says that whatever you have achieved in life is not attributable to your hard work, to your talent, to your intelligence, to your industry, to your sincerity, but is attributable to some sixth sense or some supernatural, supernormal powers that you have, which is a rubbish thing, which is, I think, I for one, would never argue. So, despite the fact that one very young and talented blind person with whom I am in conversation these days, and I find it very interesting, when I shared this philosophy, he said, "Well, sir," he said with utmost politeness, "Sir, this when you are saying this is just a limitation like any other limitation, are you not underplaying the challenges that we as blind people face?" And then I clarified. When I clarified, he understood. I said, "Look, blindness per se does not pose as big a challenge as the barriers that blind persons routinely encounter do. So these barriers compound the challenge faced by a person faced by us as blind persons." And I think he understood it very well, and that's how it happened. But I feel that well, there may be some certain areas where people may have different opinions, but I think this philosophy actually generates a lot of strength and confidence. It inspires confidence, and it has a lot of practical value. It's not just rhetoric. That's how I feel, and it throws profound insights into this, and particularly to the younger generations of the blind. I would suggest that they read Dr. Kenneth Jernigan and Dr. Jacobus Steinbruch at length. Um, I mean, of course, Indian context may be different, but that apart, I think their philosophy essentially has immense universal value, is of universal value. That's how I feel. So, though I am open to ideas, but I feel that yes, that's how it is. And then this kind of a philosophy also belies the myth that blindness is equal to inability to perform. It's not that. I had stated in my earlier audio clipping that blindness is a physical nuisance which can be overcome by the use of alternative techniques, and I stand by that. Uh, so, if you have, for example, and I remember during my adolescent days, since my adolescent days, I've been reading Dr. Kenneth Jernigan and Dr. Jacobus Steinbruch. During those days, we used to get a magazine called Braille Monitor. It is still alive, it is still published, though for many years now I have not been reading it. Now, e text version is also available, but when we were college going students, we used to just get it in braille. It used to be shipped across to us all the way from America, and it would take about 6 weeks, 7 weeks for that magazine to reach us. And I used to read with so that magazine with uncommon veracity. So, friends, I think that says it all, and I hope that it clarifies what I actually wanted to say in the just preceding English audio clipping. I have also posted. I am also posting a similar audio clip in Hindi. Uh, clarifying the same issue, because the earlier clipping I was talking about disability in general, and I simply made a quick passing uh, statement about blindness. But later I realized that probably this statement may not be properly grasped or understood. So that's how it is. Thank you so much for now.
Speech off. Speech on. Send. Button.